Welcome to Bob Scheer, the editor of Truth Take. Thanks for joining me.
Right.
So let's talk about this fundraiser at George Clooney's house that Obama had. He raised a record $15 million the day after he announced that he was in favor of same-sex marriage. You think that's a coincidence?
No, it's a no-brainer. It's a community he has to energize, as he does many progressive people. It trumps the concerns people have about his failure in the economy and ending the war. You know, most progressives are rather disappointed. It establishes him clearly as the lesser evil. And for anybody in the entertainment field, the cultural field, anyone with a brain, frankly, he's clearly the lesser evil, and you got to get out for the guy.
Well, it wasn't really about whether Hollywood's for Romney, because there's only a couple of people who really seem to be out there stumping for him. But the issue is really is that you had a lot of progressives in Hollywood, of course, who were disappointed that Obama didn't really embrace the issues and take action on the issues that they had hoped in 2008, and were sort of milling about on the sidelines. This really seems to be something that's going to energize his base. And in fact, yesterday we had a story that Dustin Lance Black, the screenwriter of Milk, has decided from publicly announcing he was going to sit out the race this time to saying he's going to host a fundraiser now for Obama. So that seems like that's going to have a payoff for him.
I think it will. And by the way, Lance Black is a fascinating person, and he was raised as a Mormon. He's quite respectful of the religion, and I think he's going to be devastating on the campaign trail because he speaks out. He was raised in large measure in Texas. He's spoken in my class here at USC. The students love him. And because he's as American as apple pie, and he happens to be gay, which is the whole point of the discussion. He didn't design being gay. He gets along very well with his family. He went to church, and yet he is gay. And that's really the only issue here. And then he's going to say, look, Obama acknowledged it. It's about time. It's a no-brainer. It's a human rights issue. And I do think for many people it was established clearly that Obama is the adult in the room. He can go with change. He's not mean-spirited. He's not a captive of the right.
I do think this was a risky move on his part. Do you agree? On Obama's part. I mean, he can alienate a whole lot of voters by taking a stance on something that he didn't have to take a stance on.
Well, for any voter, that was the deal breaker. They're going to go with the Republicans anyway. You know, same thing about choice or anything else. They're going to go there. We're talking about, first of all, young people have to be energized. For young people, this is not an issue anymore. It's just an obvious human right, and get over it. You know, the polling data shows.
Absolutely, yeah. For it's an issue. It's not an issue for anybody under 30. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Obama, they've examined.
If only they would vote.
And that's a group that they have to get to vote. They have to motivate. And as I say, I think for many people, this is the marker they were looking for. And they're not going to be, you know, they weren't going to vote against the guy because the Republicans are worse on all the issues they care about. Clearly, he's the lesser evil. This puts some passion into it. Throw in the fact that Romney's got that bullying story, which is really, you know, hard to swallow. I mean, this is a guy who, you know, they wrestled someone to the ground. He had the scissor. You know, this is bullying. We've had a movie about that. You know, people understand that. And this guy comes off as, okay, you know, you were the plastic figure up to now. Now you're the mean guy. You know,
I don't think that's going to stick to Romney, but whatever.
Well, I think it is going to stick. I think people are searching for a handle on Romney. Romney cannot move to the moderate, which would be the appeal. He's tossed that aside. He's got to keep his base happy. And his base is, I think, unfortunately, is not the old Republican base. Lugar was rejected, you know. Richard Nixon would seem like a pinko to many people in that base. Ronald Reagan himself, you know, I remember I interviewed Ronald Reagan, and he told me on homosexuality, he says, do whatever you want. Don't do it in the street and scare the horses.
That would not fly in his Republican Party of today, clearly.
And so what really Obama has captured is the modern center. He's the adult watching a store. He's the sensible, reasonable figure.
Let's talk about Hollywood liberals for a minute. Steve Lopez had a column in the LA Times in which he sort of took them to task for not caring about the local core issues that liberals ought to care about. What do you think about that?
I like this column very much in the sense that, you know, there are a lot of issues out there that you take the Democrats to task for, particularly when you're living in Los Angeles or Beverly Hills, and these are Democrats, after all, who are cutting funding for the schools and, you know, not doing what has to be done.
Well, the state is broke. That's a different problem. I mean, I don't think that anybody wants to cut funding for the schools. That's a state issue.
The fact of the matter is a Democratic president has thrown a lot of money at the banks and gotten very little back for ordinary people. There is a legitimate progressive critique to make of this president. The problem is that the Republicans are far worse on all of these issues. So it's very difficult if you're at a dinner party to make the case for sitting out the election or not worrying about the Republicans when they want to do, anything, any objection you have to Obama, they want to do it 10 times more.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is I think there is a legitimate critique of many Hollywood liberals that they care about, they have their pet issues, whether it's Darfur, that's George Clooney cares about the Sudan, or whether even if it is same-sex marriage, which I agree is a civil rights issue, but, jobs is more important. I mean, let's be honest, there are people who are having trouble putting food on the table, and what's happened to the unions in this country, and we sort of traditional progressive issues that affect the broad mass of American society sometimes just seem, like things that don't engage and excite Hollywood liberals. Sometimes I wonder if they care more about obscure issues that are unique to whoever they happen to meet and get excited about, or what do you think about that?
With all due respect, let me challenge your premise. This is not an obscure issue for most of America. Gays are everywhere. They're in every family. We all have cousins, nephews, sons that are gay. We meet gay people. It's become, thanks part to Hollywood making us familiar with it. You cannot work in Hollywood. And Ronald Reagan was one who understood this very clearly. Elizabeth Taylor gave voice to it. When forced Reagan to at least deal with AIDS. You cannot work in the creative community in this country, anywhere in the country, without recognizing that there are wonderful, decent people who are, whatever, God-given reason, are gay, and they are entitled to full human rights. It's a fundamental human rights issue.
Absolutely not going to argue with that. I absolutely agree. I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to allow anybody to paint myself as saying paint me as saying that's not a fundamental issue. But when you're talking about people being able to put food on the table, that has to come before.
I understand
right?
that, Sharon, but it's the Republicans who took the food off the table. It was George W. Bush who threw all the money at the back. What is the Republican narrative? And yes, if you had a reasonable, liberal, Eisenhower-type Republican who actually, Richard Nixon favored a guaranteed annual income. He favored the Environmental Protection Agency. If we had moderate Republicans, dare I say it, even in the mold of Richard Nixon, maybe there would be a horse race for a progressive person.
And do you think Hollywood will be a key factor in getting Obama elected this fall, or reelected?
Not just Hollywood, but the educated community, the creative community, not just because of money or that sort of thing, energy. And what he did with this issue is he energized the base, not just for Hollywood. And he said, look, there's something going on here. I'm the decent human being in this. I'm the adult. I'm not going to pander, and I will take some courageous stance. And that's all the difference people were looking for.
Yeah, well, $15 million later, I think that's exactly what we're seeing. So thank you very much, Bob Scheer. This was fun. We should do this more often.
Anytime.
Thanks.